Hi everyone, please excuse the old school YouTuber filming in a bedroom vibe. My next door neighbours are doing a whole load of gardening right up against where I normally film, and so I've escaped up here, and hopefully you'll hear a bit less of kind of the banging and cutting hedges and those kinds of things. Today I wanted to talk about privilege in publishing in the book industry, and maybe the fact that I am clearly in very much of a DIY situation. Today is a day when I'm not teaching, it's my only opportunity to film. I don't live in a mansion, I don't have a studio, I don't have a production team. I'm just making this video to share my thoughts and to help build my author business and, you know, for the ad revenue on YouTube and all of those things in a clearly DIY, homemade, one person small business situation. So maybe this is exactly the vibe that we need today. Anyway, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of chat in the indie author space about exactly this. This is particularly in response to some comments that Richard Osman made on his podcast, The Rest is Entertainment, and also Keira Knightley's release of her book, I Love You Just the Same. So I'll start with talking about her, and none of this is any kind of comment on sort of those people as individuals or creatives, but just the sort of situation, the privilege, the disparity, as it were. So Keira Knightley's book came out and she has been everywhere. So she's been on TV, podcasts, radio, social media. I have seen her talking about her book pop up in so many different places. And that's been the thing that people have been talking about. She has had such a huge marketing campaign and so many opportunities. And of course, it makes sense. If I had a podcast and it was, did have one, it's parked, but you know, a podcast where I had the power to be able to ask Keira Knightley to be a guest, I mean, my goodness, that would obviously be amazing for my podcast if I had one. And it would be a great opportunity for her to be able to utilize my podcast to get to my audience. And she's done exactly that. She's been on all of the various different things. And of course, it makes sense. It's good for both parties. It's good for the people producing whatever that piece of media is. And it's good for her to get the word out, and it's good for her publishers. So of course, this is what happens. I think part of why this has been talked about so much is because she has pivoted. So her celebrity status is due to her work as an actor, but she's then produced a book, and I've heard her talking about it, and she talks about how she made these beautiful illustrations while her children were asleep. By the way, I haven't actually seen the book, but I've heard her talk about it. She said, you know, I drew these pictures when my children were going to bed and I worked on them, and it was this whole thing. And it actually felt to me very like how a lot of indie authors talk about their books. So often it starts out as some passion project, and it's not unusual for it to be something that you made for your children or for a family member. And then you think, oh, actually, I'd quite like to publish this. But so Keira Knightley's done that. And then obviously because of who she is, she's been able to get a publishing deal. And then obviously because of who she is, she's got that huge marketing power, even though she's a new author. So she's pivoted, but her already status as an actor has enabled her to have such a huge amount of marketing that most authors, not just indie authors, but just authors, are unable to get, even if their books are equivalent in terms of quality, content, whatever it might be. They are still not getting that kind of airtime. And so what we see is a woman who is already wealthy and famous and has this platform already, getting more of that. And yeah, you could say that it's jealousy on the part of us authors who don't have that, going, no fair. But it isn't fair. It's logical, but it isn't fair. There are so many books that have worth and they are not given the marketing budget. So that might be because, I mean, come on, if you ran a publishing company and you had Keira Knightley on your books, you would put loads of money into that because you're going to make loads of money. It makes business sense. In a capitalist society, it makes sense. However, there are so many incredible books that just don't get that same level of exposure. And so that means that there are stories that won't be read by readers who are going to love them, and authors that are not discovered. And what happens is we have the same set of people who are already famous or renowned continuing to have their voices heard and continuing to have their art seen, and then things that are innovative or different or whatever don't get seen. And so it's really important to acknowledge that this is a thing that happens, and think about how we can ensure that diverse literature is given a platform, and that voices that are not already heard are given an opportunity to see if audiences are excited by that, and maybe this is something that's going to blow up. But if it's not given the marketing budget or the platform, then it doesn't have that opportunity. And as I say, this is nothing to do with talking about the worth of the book itself. I haven't seen it. This is nothing against Keira Knightley. I've heard, I think, 2 interviews with her, and she was interesting and seemed very nice. It's about that position, and she is not the only person where this is seen. But obviously, as I say, I think the thing that is individual to this particular situation is that's made people make so much noise about it is the pivot, and the fact that, I mean, she has been everywhere. It's been a really, really big marketing campaign. The other thing that was talked about was Richard Osman. So on his podcast, he talked about the fact that there was no real worth in marketing on social media, and that he felt that what people would be best advised to do would be to do a tour of bookshops and do signings and appearances in bookshops and meet people, and then those people buy the books and so forth. And again, for him, yeah, I'm sure that does make sense. I'm sure that his draw as a celebrity, again, is going to mean that people go to the bookshop to go and see Richard Osman, and, you know, they'll buy his book and give it a go. And also, he is selling the quantities of books because of his name and because he can get into all of the places. I've seen his books in bookshops, but I've also seen them in supermarkets and everywhere. Anywhere where you can sell books, you will see Richard Osman's books. They're really, really popular. And he's also got the Netflix movie adaptation. So his books are already known about, and he is already known about from his work in TV. He is a celebrity with a big profile. So if he talks about going to bookshops and doing a book tour, of course people are going to go. Of course he's going to sell vast numbers of books. Of course it's good to be meeting face to face. But if I did that, a lot of bookshops would say no, for a start. I would be paying for all of the travel myself. I'm not selling the quantities. There's no way I'm selling the quantities that he would. So the books I'm selling would not pay for the travel and accommodation and so forth, because, you know, if I was doing Waterstone's book signing in Birmingham, who's coming to that? I'll sell 5 books and probably sit on my own at a table, and then be out of pocket for all of my expenses. So I know what he's saying, that for him that's definitely going to be worthwhile, and for many authors, going into bookshops and meeting people is a good thing. But it shows that he does not understand that for most of us, that's not going to be a thing we can do. As someone without a profile, without a name, with an unheard book, people are not coming to our bookshop event. We cannot afford to travel around the country, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. We all want to do these things, but for me personally, I'm only going into bookshops in my local area because there's no other way I can do it. And often I'm still out of pocket, even though I've driven 10 miles up the road. You know, so yeah, it just shows that he does not understand that for many of us, being able to utilize the power of social media, doing so in an intelligent way rather than a scrolly, wasty, timey way, which many of us do. I absolutely do myself. But using the ability to find our market through social media and use something which is ostensibly free, unless we are paying for paid ads and things, that potentially is all we can do. And also, as a one-woman team, as I said, you know, here I am at home. My dog is next to me, by the way, but she's being very quiet. I don't have a team booking those things in for me and contacting these places. If I am making some kind of book tour, it's me. If I'm touting for some kind of media adaptation, it's me. It is one person with the time and connections and resources that I have. And so this is why there's been so much talk about it. This recognition that for people who are already famous, who already have a status and a wealth, they just get more. You know, Richard Osman goes to a bookshop near us and there is going to be a queue for him. Emma Rosen goes to bookshop, there is no queue. So by him doing anything, by him doing any kind of marketing, it only sells more books and adds more to his status, to people's knowledge of him, to that whole thing. We have these celebrities turned author who, because people are interested in who they are, they've enjoyed them in film or TV or whatever it might be, and then they write a book, people are interested in the book and seeing what it's all about. And also these people have this access to this huge marketing ability, and because they sell such quantities of books, they can spend so much money on more marketing and more people finding their books and more sales and so on. And so we have that situation. But we also have famous authors, so people like Julia Donaldson, Stephen King, I don't know, lots and lots of famous authors. Why those are the two I came up with. But for these guys, if they bring out a new book, people are just going to buy it. Their existing audience are going to go, I like their books. Oh, they got a new one out. I will buy it. Even for someone who isn't prolific. So, you know, when Harper Lee's book was brought out, everybody bought it because, oh my goodness, there's another Harper Lee book. So anybody who has renown, either for their skill as an author or because they're super prolific and their books, for some people, it's their books are like a safe, all the books kind of are formulaic. And so people know, I know what I'm getting. And so they will just buy the next book. And again, of course they do. That's fair enough. But also new audiences find those authors really easily. If you've got people who they've got to an age where they read those kinds of books, or they have just got into reading, or they're trying a new genre, you're going to try the big names because, you know, they are seminal, or they are, as I say, renowned, or again, they have a reputation. You know, you're going to read something that's probably decent and well produced, and the author knows what they're doing, and so on. So the thing for these guys is, I mean, imagine if Stephen King was doing, he wanted to be on the Graham Norton show and he wanted to be on, I don't know, whatever podcast, right? They're going to have him on. They're going to be falling over themselves. Oh my goodness, Stephen King. And you occasionally see famous authors doing that. They do sometimes do the rounds. Not as often, I think, because we're all a little bit reclusive. But some of them do. They've got a new book out and they go and do the media thing. And they do the book tours. That's more likely. You see them doing book signings. And you get the big posters up in tube stations. And you get the magazine articles and all of the things, and you see, oh, there's a new book out by, let's say, Stephen King. Fantastic. I will buy it because you are aware there's a new book out. And probably because you follow him as an author on Amazon, you've also had a ping on your device, it's one over there, saying, by the way, there's a new book out by Stephen King. So you've been told like 10 times. And so, of course, you buy the new book by Stephen King because you like him, and also you have been reminded multiple times, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book, and it's in the front of all of the bookshops and so on. So if you already have a name, you are way more likely to sell more books, to find new audiences, and so on. And so there is that situation, and none of that is a comment on the quality of any of those books. I've talked about really brilliant books and authors, but it's their, as I say, it's their position. It's recognizing that privilege. Putting all of that aside, I also wanted to talk about wealth. You know, that is more kind of status and audience and renown, but wealth has an impact as well. So, for example, I heard someone talking about, I wish I could remember the exact details of this very sketchy story I'm going to tell you, like I really only have the tiniest details, but it was somebody who had sold their house or something, or had some kind of payout, and they had this big pot of money, and so they had invested that into, it was an indie author, and they'd invested all of that into the marketing of their book, and so their audience had just absolutely exploded. They'd sold enormous amounts of copies of the book. And, you know, that had put them in a really good position because they'd sort of very quickly built this is who I am, because they were able to have all of the money thrown at all of the things, pay for the appearances and pay for the media, whatever, and you know, have the paid ads and all of the things. And so they had very quickly built an audience that takes lots of us a lot longer. So I can't remember who it was, all the specific details, but I'm sure we can all think of examples of people like that. And another example, there's an author I'm aware of. In fact, I see it quite a lot in certain Facebook groups of authors where certain people share their sales and their marketing budgets. They share their figures and go, oh, well, I've made 5 figures, 6 figures, whatever it might be. And they share, I spent this and I made this. And you think, well, that's all well and good, and I can see what you're saying. If I spend a certain amount of money, that sells a certain amount of books, and then that grows my audience, and those people come back and buy more books, and they tell their friends, and we explode the thing out, and it makes sense. But I do not have several £1,000s a month to invest in this. I don't. The point is that if you have wealth and you have that disposable income, there are two benefits. One is you have the money to spend on the production of the book and the marketing of the book that other people do not have, but also that you have the lack of worry about if you don't see that money back. It's okay, it doesn't matter, it was a side hustle, it didn't work, don't care. Or you don't need that money is the point. It's you have that disposable income that you can use to start this new business. And you see people talking about, you see them saying, well, if you're going to take this seriously, if you as an author, this is something you want to do for the rest of your life, well, you've got to put your money where your mouth is, and you've got to invest. And so your book's got to have these things, and you've got to invest in this, and you've got to do these kinds of ads and this, that, the other. And it's, thousands and thousands of pounds. And that is all well and good when you have that kind of money. And not only do you have it, but losing it doesn't matter. And so that privilege of that lack of worry, especially in the economic climate at the moment, means that for certain individuals, they are able to climb into the heights of being a successful, best-selling, whatever it might be, author much, much quicker, simply by virtue of them having the money to do it. And this is why when I put together, my self-publishing book, it very much has this tone. And in a lot of my videos, it has this tone where I say, well, you can spend on this, but here are other ways to do it. Because if you have a story, a piece of art, and you can always equate anything in the writing space with art, music, whatever it might be. You've created a piece of art and you would like it to be distributed for an audience to see. That gatekeeping should not be around your wealth or your renown, And of course, the world we live in, that's the way things go. You've got more money, you've got more power, then you have more access. And so you have more and more and more. While certain other people, they don't have that, that's not something that they can have access to. And another side of that is, for some people, they already have, let's say, a social media following. So maybe they're already known in a certain sphere. So that could be like a lifestyle thing, or it could be they're really well known for campaigning about something, or they're known for, they share information about whatever. So it's like if I had a high profile social media account regarding education or children's literature or something like that before I wrote my books, then there's two things. One is that if I went indie, I've already got an audience who are interested in what I have to say, and so I'm going to sell more books, and so I can afford to spend more money on it. But also I'm far more likely to get a publishing deal, because if I go to a publishing house or I go to an agent and I say, well, I've got 20,000 followers on Instagram and I've got 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and whatever it might be, they are going to see the commercial opportunity that, hey, they publish your book. You already have a platform. You already have people who are interested in what you have to say. But if you're a person who's written a story and you're kind of tentatively going, oh, I'd quite like to publish this, and you are a nobody, then your story, regardless of worth, is less likely to get out there. And if you're a person who had to make decisions regarding the book production or the marketing or whatever due to, well, I couldn't afford it, I didn't have the time, I work a full-time job, this, that, the other, that impacts your ability for your art to be seen and appreciated. It's a shame. And it's something that I really feel passionate about. And I want to talk very quickly about some ways to tackle it. So, first of all, I think as readers, I think that we need to read diversely. I talked in my Barriers to Self-Publishing video about the fact that there are some book bloggers and book influencers who don't read indie, for example. And I think for any of us, we should be open to trying something. It is okay to read a book, read the first bit and go, no, it's not for me. It's okay to try a book where the cover is not great, or to read a book and even though the editing's a bit off, actually there's stuff about it you really like, and to sort of appreciate some value of it and some message it's getting across. Or I just think we need to be open to small authors, lower production. You know, if you watched a real bedroom produced series but it was so interesting and cool, you would be into it, even if like the set design was a bit questionable. We all have those like low budget productions we love. There is something about books that makes us really suspicious about it, and there's something about books that makes us not want to take a chance on an unknown author, or something a bit, oh, that person's not really got a following and they're a nobody. We need to read the nobodies as readers. We need to make sure we're not just reading the well-known, the talked about, the book club favourites, that we are reading just something that catches our eye, or something that's completely out of our comfort zone, and reading diversely, reading things that are unusual to us. Because if we're reading them and we're sharing what we're reading, then we are helping to amplify those voices. But also by just buying that book, by just, you know, sharing it, buying it, reviewing it, all of the things we talk about as indies. Please do these things. If we do those things, if I buy an indie book, one book at a craft fair or something, my impact is vastly higher for that individual than it is for Richard Osman, who if I buy his book in Tesco's, he's going to make 5p and he doesn't care, you know. And again, that doesn't mean to say I shouldn't buy Richard Osman's book. I actually don't massively like his books, but as an example, it just means that when you support small businesses, when you give someone else an opportunity, when you use your voice to amplify theirs, when you give them a chance, that is huge. And as readers, we have the potential to do that. So, and hey, I'm not perfect. You look at my books I've read and they're very eclectic, but also I do read some really, really well-known books, mostly, probably. But we all just need to remember, we need to read our local authors, emerging authors, weird strange book you saw in a bookshop and was weirdly attracted to, had never heard of. You know, we need to read these things. Otherwise all we get is the same, more of the same, and more and more and more of the same, because the small, innovative, interesting, weirdy authors don't ever get to make enough money to do the thing. Or, you know, they can't justify it, because if you don't make any money from this, we all need money because that is the way it works. So reading is one way, but I also want to suggest that what I think we need in the book space is something like, you know, on Radio 1, they have their, what's it called? BBC Sounds, I think it is. And they're new artists. I know I'm butchering this and I've probably got it completely wrong, but they have this BBC Introducing, that's what I'm looking for, the BBC Introducing thing. And they play out new bands on the radio. And I know people who, you know, because I'm in a band as well, I'm in a covers band, so it will never happen for me, but I know original artists who have submitted their music and it's been played. How cool is that? That's amazing. They get played out on national radio. Wow, that's so cool. And maybe some people hear it and they download the song, and people have genuinely made careers out of, oh, it's given a chance because the BBC made this little opportunity. We need that in books. We need, you know, a radio station, like a traditional media. It needs to be. It can't be, I don't think, like a podcast or I think it needs to be a little feature on some kind of traditional media, national traditional media, where they spotlight indie authors or small authors or emerging authors or diverse authors, and they just have a introducing these books, little book review. So it could be we get a 1 minute interview, it could be we get a little box in a magazine, and that's something we can submit our work to, and occasionally something like that pops up, and obviously we overwhelm them with our submissions and then they disappear. But that's what we need. We need something where those guys can curate, oh, these are kind of cool, we're gonna share these with our audience. And maybe, you know, what if Graham Norton had on Keira Knightley, Richard Osman, Stephen King, Julia Donaldson. What a couch, what a fascinating discussion. People are tuning in. Book lovers are all over that. Let's throw in, I don't know, some big A-lister as well. Let's have, think of people. Jennifer Aniston, she's on there as well. So everybody's watching it. And then at the end, we've got Emma Rosen, we've got Kirsten McNeil and her son Hunter, we've got Claire Linney, we've got Dane Cobain, we've got Charles Heathcote, we've got Jude Lennon, we've got all of these indie authors that I talk about lots on this channel. You know, let's have Emily Lloyd Gale, and let's have Lisa Lewison, and let's have all of the people, and just have like 3 a week or something. See, Graham Norton is not going to be the platform for this, but something bookish, right? And it could be on the radio, it could be a little book segment. Let's not just always do the celebrity authors. Let's have a little, even if it's one, just, oh, and I came across this indie author, or, oh, there's this new emerging. We have to do it, otherwise books become so samey. And so what privilege results in is this homogenous, you know, landscape. And so it has to change. And I think the only way to see change is by readers, influencers, and media opportunities giving space purposefully and thoughtfully to other creators, to different and unusual, and taking a chance, taking a risk. Because if they can't amplify voices, we don't have the power in either our wealth or our status to achieve it. And we rely on other people. So yeah, that's everything I have to say about that. Thank you for watching. I will get off of my high horse and go and do something else. Thank you so much. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. And you know, by watching my videos, I have ads on these videos. I make some money from these. It really helps. And if you like my posts on my other social media platforms, and if you buy one of my books, like it really genuinely does help. And by sharing, if you buy my book, please review it. Please, you know, share it on your social media, because this is a power I don't have. And not just me, but other indies and other small authors. You come across a new and interesting book, please give it a review, put it on Goodreads, suggest it to someone, share it on your social media. It makes an enormous difference to us because we don't have the privilege. Anyway, please do subscribe. More videos like this one coming up, and please hit like. Let me know in the comments. In fact, just suggest to me amazing authors and I'll check their books out. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all soon for another video. Take care.